I'm going to name a list of players. R.J. Barrett, Precious Achiuwa, Andrew Nembhard, Cade Cunningham, Scotty Barnes, Moses Moody, Daylon Serb, Jalen Duren, and Caleb Houston. Every single player I mentioned here has been drafted into the NBA. Of those 9 draft picks, 7 of them were picked in the first round. Of those 7 first round picks, 5 of them were drafted in the lottery. Of those 5 lottery picks, 3 of them went in the top 5. Of those 3 top 5 picks, 2 of them went in the top 3. And of those 2 top 3 picks, 1 of them went first overall. Now, what do these 9 players have in common? Well, first of all, they all are high school graduates of Montford Academy, one of the best high school basketball programs in recent memory and maybe ever. But also this, every single player I mentioned has been a teammate of Dariq Whitehead at some point since he was 13 years old. This is a list of players that Whitehead has been able to practice with and against since he was 13. Guys he's been able to learn from over the years or be mentors for over the years. I know it was a rough year at Duke for Dariq Whitehead. He entered the year as a consensus top 3 recruit in his class and a projected top 5 pick. However, due to injuries, he's fallen on boards for the most part, and it might be to the point he's not going to go lottery. However, to me, Dariq Whitehead is still a lottery prospect in this class. He has traits that I would still bet on in the lottery. Even if he was underwhelming at Duke, I think the context is important when it comes to Dariq Whitehead and how he's evaluated. I do think there are concerns on tape regardless of the injuries, but I do think the injuries have played a major factor in the results as well. Dariq Whitehead has the ideal frame for a wing in the modern NBA. He's 6'7", 220 pounds with a 6'9" wingspan, and he's capable of playing both the 2 and the 3. I would say he's a good athlete. It was hard to fully gauge what his athleticism was like and how it projects because of the injuries. It was clear to me he wasn't the same athlete he was in high school. When you put the senior year of high school tape right next to the freshman year at Duke tape, you notice a real difference in the athleticism. And when you see that difference in a year at the most, and more than likely under a year, that to me is a sign of injuries playing a factor. In some ways, it reminds me a bit of a former Duke freshman that ended up going in the first round with a somewhat similar profile in AJ Griffin. I will talk about how Dariq's athleticism translates to his finishing ability later, but I first want to dive into what I really like on tape. Dariq Whitehead brings his most value, in my opinion, as a perimeter scorer that has creation upside. Due to Duke establishing a certain type of offense before Dariq's return to the lineup because he did miss a bit of the start of the season due to injury, he was limited to more of an off-ball role. However, he did show that he was a really good three-point shooter. Overall on the season, he shot 42.9% from 3 on 3.5 attempts per game in 20.9 minutes per game. In 7 games as a starter, he shot 39.4% from 3 on 4.7 attempts per game in 26.6 minutes per game. In 18 games during ACC play, he shot 46.3% from 3 on 3.7 attempts per game in 21.8 minutes per game. And in 5 games, when you combine the ACC and the national tournament, he shot 53.3% on 3 attempts per game in 21 minutes per game. He's really good as a catch and shoot threat. He has some comfortability off movement, and I think he has adjusted well from that on-ball high school role he played to an off-ball college role, and I do think him having a lot of experience playing an off-ball role because he played off of guys like R.J. Barrett and Cade Cunningham and Scotty Barnes in high school, I do think that helped him make that transition a lot easier than we usually see with other guys who had these big time on ball roles their senior year of high school but had to translate that to a more off ball role in college. However, I also do think that he showed on ball capabilities as well. He flashed as an off dribble creator, he flashed with pull up shooting ability, and while it wasn't his role at Duke, he did show the flashes of shot creation that he showed a lot of in high school. While it wasn't a focal point of his game at Duke, I do think he showed enough to make me optimistic about it potentially being a real part of his game with continued development and more emphasis being put on that part of his game. Given his age, frame, and perimeter creation upside, I believe that Dariq Whitehead is still worth a lottery pick. I also like Dariq Whitehead as a secondary passer in a connecting role. I think if given more opportunity, his assist numbers would be higher, but again at Duke, wasn't really his role. I think in this area, it reminds me a bit of Jarris Walker in the sense of the numbers don't tell the full story with how good of a passer they are. I don't think he's as good of a passer as Jarris Walker, but I do think he's a better passer than like 1 assist per game suggests that he is. I like his traits in this regard. I don't think he has primary upside as a passer, then again, who does? But as someone who can play within the flow of the offense, he does bring value. He can pass off drives, he can make the extra pass, he can make passes in transition, he has good vision, he has decent feel, and he makes pretty good reads overall. I think this ability adds to the value of Whitehead. Not only does he have value in terms of scoring upside, he also has value in terms of passing upside. The scoring passing upside isn't me suggesting he has like James Harden kind of upside or anything like that. What I am suggesting is that it gives Dariq Whitehead potential to be lineup flexible as a player that fits almost any type of offense as well as any type of situation. Again, I want to clarify that this is the potential he has as a prospect, not what he is right now. However, Dariq Whitehead did struggle as a finisher at the basket on tape. He was good in transition, I will say that. It wasn't all bad, because he ran the floor well, he's a pretty good finisher in transition situations, but the half court is where I saw a lot of problems. Now, I don't think it's a lack of strength problem. I didn't really think he struggled to get to the rim. It was more about what happened when he got to the rim. He seemed out of control. He seemed inconsistent with his intent and touch. And I do think some of that is rhythm being kind of thrown out of whack because of the injuries. But I do think it's a bit concerning even without the injuries. That's not to say he doesn't have potential to grow into a good finisher, because he has that kind of potential based off his physical tools in my opinion. But as of right now, it is an area he does need to improve on, and I think that will be probably the biggest swing factor in the kind of player he ends up becoming. Dariq Whitehead is, in my opinion, the most intriguing evaluation in this class. It's why I am the most excited, as I'll probably ever be for this draft cycle, to evaluate a prospect in a scouting report video, even with guys like Wembanyama, Scoot, the Thompson twins, Miller, like even among all those guys, this is the one I'm most excited for. Because there are a lot of questions you have to ask. How much of it was an injury, or injuries in his case? How much of it was just who he is as a prospect? I do think Dariq Whitehead showed flashes of the player he was in high school during his time at Duke. However, I do think the injuries also played a big factor in all of this. He had the injury before the season, so it took him time to get into rhythm, and once he got in rhythm, he got injured again. What's interesting to me is that when he came back from the second injury, the numbers were solid. In the 19 games following his return from the second injury, Whitehead averaged 9 points per game, 2.5 rebounds per game, and 1 assist per game on 44.7, 48, 77.3 shooting splits. And that 48% from 3 was on 3.9 attempts per game, which, considering his role and only playing 23 minutes per game, I think that's impressive. I do think the fact he really doesn't look like the same player when you compare his high school and college tape does point to injuries playing a factor in why his season at Duke went the way it did. I do think we have to factor in his high school tape into the evaluation as well. I'm a believer in general of the idea that with all prospects, you should factor in AAU, international play, and or high school tape into evaluations on top of the college pre-draft sample. But with Dariq, I think more emphasis needs to be put on that pre-college tape, because in general, college is just a small sample of what a player is as a prospect. But specifically with Dariq Whitehead, I think that's definitely a case, because I don't think it's fair to just use what he has shown in a situation where he really didn't get any breaks. He had a lot of bad luck in college, when the talent suggests across all levels that he could be even better than that, and he could get back to what he was before this bad luck just happened at Duke. I don't think it's unrealistic to believe he could get back to what he was in high school. It's far from a guarantee he does, but it's not out of the question at all. With that being said, it is a risk at the end of the day. If it was a guarantee that Dariq was going to get back to what he was in high school, he easily goes top 10 and might even go top 5. But I do think the risk of him not being that player is real. I know Whitehead is viewed as a mid to late first round guy at this point, but in my opinion, he still grades out as a lottery prospect. In my opinion, I would draft him as high as number 7 and wouldn't let him fall out of the lottery. Again, that's what I think, not what everyone else thinks, and I think I don't need to say this, but I will. I don't have an impact on the actual draft results. What I say is just my opinion. NBA teams don't listen to me. This is just what I think based off what I see. But based off the fact that 1, he's super young for this class, he's younger than some guys that are going to be drafted in 2024, he shows a lot of translatable NBA skills, he's a good 3-point shooter, one of the better 3-point shooters in this class, and I think his ability to score off ball and create somewhat on ball is something that will translate right away, and specifically with the off ball scoring, that could be something that gets him minutes early on. He has shown potential as a creator and a passer, and then you look at his history. He's been playing against future NBA guys since he was 13 years old, with and against. He's been practicing with and against future top 3 picks like RJ Barrett, Cade Cunningham, top 5 picks like Scotty Barnes, so he has a lot of experience. There aren't many other players in this class that have faced a gauntlet or experienced a gauntlet's a better way of putting it, the way Dariq Whitehead has, where he's gone up against these kind of guys in practice or played with these guys on the court. Not many have that. I do think that's important. The experience you get with and against other guys that are future NBA players does matter, and that's something Dariq has had since he was, again, 13 years old. And I also think the injuries played a factor in why he didn't have the season people thought he would at Duke. I think without injuries getting in the way, Dariq Whitehead looks a lot better. And I do think he is likely a top 5 pick in this draft if he doesn't deal with the injuries. Because besides the fact that the injuries that caused him his time, they also throw off his rhythm, and rhythm is important when it comes to playing basketball at a high level. And I think the fact that he did underwhelm this season, but still showed the signs that make me and maybe some others believe that he's still a lottery talent, goes to show how talented he is. But I do think we have to base the evaluation off what actually happened. And based off what actually happened, it is a risk to take him like top 10 or in the lottery. I understand, it definitely is a risk. But in my opinion, it's a risk worth taking. I think teams like the Utah Jazz, the Indiana Pacers, the Toronto Raptors, the LA Lakers, and the Miami Heat are teams that would be ideal for him based off my personal draft range. Those are teams that are in position to take that risk and have a good track record of prospect development. And based off what his actual draft range is, I think teams like Memphis and Brooklyn would be ideal landing spots for similar reasons. Whitehead is a risk, I'm not denying that. I understand I'm higher on him than most, and I do expect him to go a lot lower than the draft range I think he should go based off the grade I have on him as a prospect. But to me, he's worth taking that risk. Because if he proves that this year at Duke was a fluke, and it was because of the injuries and the lack of rhythm because of missed time due to injuries, and he becomes the player that I think he can, and get back to what he showed us in high school as a senior, where he was the best player in high school basketball, he will return top 10 value in this class easily, and maybe even value higher than that. But that's the end of this video. If you made it to this point, thank you so much. Again, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, hit notification bell, notify whenever I release a video. I'm making videos about basketball all the time, so that's something that interests you. Really do enjoy this channel, and liking and subscribing are the two best ways you can help me help my channel grow, because it helps me out in the algorithm, helps more people find my videos, so in turn I can make consistent content for you guys moving forward. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. This was my favorite scouting report of this draft cycle. Dariq Whitehead's one of my favorite players in this class. I love doing evaluations where you have to kind of think outside the box a little bit about what you see on tape, and I think that it's an important lesson to learn for people that want to get into like scouting reports and learning about the draft, that it goes beyond just what you saw in college, and I think that context is really important. And Dariq Whitehead is like the biggest example of that in this class. Every class has at least one of those players that's an example of it. And I understand that I am higher on Dariq Whitehead than most, but I think I've stated reasons why I believe I'm still really high on him, even if a lot of people aren't. But yeah, that's all I had to say in this one. Leave your thoughts on Dariq Whitehead in the comment section below. But that being said, have a nice day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.